excited to have our next guest with us. I haven't had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with her yet, but Clarice Turner is the president and CEO of the Almond Board of California, and she's someone who's been traveling a lot. She's also in preparation for a big meeting with a bunch of leaders for next week, so she's joining us virtually, as I mentioned. And she's really had an interesting background, so I thought it would be a good chance for those of you who have not met her yet to have a chance to get to know her a little bit better. Prior to this job, she served as president of Napa Valley Winery. She's also held CEO and senior executive positions at a variety of food and beverage companies. So think about all the different experiences that she's had before joining, and not only domestically but internationally before joining the Almond Board of California. So we're really honored to have her with us, and so with that, I'd like to have Clarice. Hopefully will pop up on your screen here, and we'll have a chance to visit with her. There she is. Hi, Clarice.
Hi, good to see you, Sarah.
Good to see you as well. And I thought we'd just start with having you make a little bit of an introduction about yourself, not only your career, but I understand you're a 9th generation Californian. So tell us a little bit about your history and why you're so interested in joining the Almond Board.
That's correct. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you this afternoon, and thank you, Sarah, for having me. Yes, that's correct. I am a 9th generation Californian. My family came here from the Basque Country and what is now near Bilbao, Spain. They came on horses, of course, in the 1700s and have farmed a lot of crops up until now, stone fruits, including almonds. And my family now farms artichokes as well as heirloom tomatoes. Very small farm. We supply to Bay Area chefs, which is a labor of love, to say the least. It's my weekend job, what I do, what I get assigned when I go home. So I have a great affinity for farming. I always have. I spent summers working in Modesto with my family's stone fruit farm and running a little roadside fruit stand with my cousins, which were some of the best memories of my life. It's also probably some of the hardest work that I've ever done in my life too, physically. But great memories, and really grounded me in how important it is to grow our food responsibly and understand where it comes from and all the things that go into that. So my intrinsic motivation, I have a great passion for farming, obviously, and I'm a bit worried about it in the state of California. And I felt like I could make a difference, Sarah, in coming into this role and really helping to represent our farmers in a positive light, especially from an environmental standpoint, that they deserve, because they've been stewarding this land for multiple generations, and 90% of our almond, or 7,600 growers out there, are family farms, and most of those are multi-generation. And that's not well known. We get demonized as big ag, and we're actually mostly family. So I am very determined to be a passionate leader, and I'm very honored, and it's with great pleasure that I lead the Almond Board of California.
Thanks, Clarice. The last time we spoke, you were in Barcelona and on quite the global tour, it sounds like. Tell us just a little bit about where you went and what you learned about global supply and demand of almonds.
Absolutely. Well, I've jumped in with both feet, to say the least. Planes, trains, and automobiles all over the place, depending on where we have conferences and things happening, trade shows, and opportunities to interact with the trade, buyers and sellers, manufacturers all over the most important markets. I've been to New Delhi and Dubai and Singapore, and most recently, yes, I was in London and Hamburg, which is a huge port and import point for us, as well as Rome, Naples, and just a little bit outside of Barcelona, an area called Reus, which is the headquarters for INC, the International Nut Council. So very, very great opportunity to meet and interact with the trade and understand what is on their minds, what drives the markets in all different parts of the world, which is very, very different. In some cases, nuts are already really an integral part of the diet and the cuisine, and in other cases, they're being introduced. Some cases they're already into snacking on nuts. In other cases, they're very much part of recipes that have been tradition for hundreds of years. In India's case, 3,000 plus years, because it's part of Ayurveda. So really a wide swath of how almonds show up across the world, and it's absolutely fascinating and critical to understand the intricacies of each of these markets so that we can drive global demand in the most efficient way possible.
Any big surprises or unique parts of that experience you might want to share?
Well, you can see I have all sorts of products on my desk here. This is like maybe a tenth of what I brought back. The biggest surprise probably for me was actually how much confectionery business there is in Europe. I understood marzipan, I understood chocolate, but you really don't get it until you're there and you just see it's prevalent everywhere, which is fantastic because I love chocolate. So I had a good time sampling through it, Sarah.
Good job. That is quite an array of products you've got there on your plate. So let's switch a little bit to the U.S. market. USDA's National Ag Statistics Service released its initial subjective forecast, and we're talking about production forecast of 3 billion pounds. Talk a little bit about how that compares to prior year, and what does that mean overall for your grower community?
Yeah, it was pretty much what we expected, given that we had a good bloom season this year. The rain stopped at the right time so the bees could fly and do their thing. So that's always a beautiful thing when that happens, because when the rain is pouring down, they don't get to do that. So it was great that we had pretty much an optimal bloom this year. So it's what we expected, and it's reflective of the good work of our farmers out there who work very hard to nurture those orchards to make sure that their yields are going to be strong. So I would say that just again, having come across so many different buyers across the world, it's very evident to me that demand is very strong and will continue to be strong. So I think the 3 billion pound crop, one of the things that I heard all across the world was that California is known not only for amazing quality, but also consistency in supply, which is super interesting phenomenon, and something that is very important to the industry because, I didn't mention I led food for Starbucks. And when you are part of a large organization and you're trying to create products that people absolutely love, you can't run out of an ingredient because they don't like it when you substitute something. So if you think about some of the larger producers, General Mills or Kraft or PepsiCo, that produce cereals and nutrition bars, and you can't run out of almonds, right? So having that consistent supply, especially when you're that huge globally, is very, very important. So that is one of the very important roles that California almonds play, is we do have volume and we do have it consistently. It's more difficult when you're farming in a Mediterranean environment where you don't, you're dry farming, for example, your yields are going to vary consistent or inconsistently from year to year. So we've had a lot of innovation in that space, and it really allows us to be efficient with our farming and consistent in our production.
So it's nice to always get some good news when we're in this room talking about things, and having good news on the demand side sounds like a really positive message going forward for your organization.
Yes. Well, it's interesting. This year we shipped more almonds than we grew, and that hasn't happened for a while. And so now what we're starting to see is the carryout of our essentially inventory from one year to the next is coming below 500 million pounds, which has not happened in several years. So that's a great thing. We still have enough to get the entire world through with consistent supply. We might run out of a few different varieties here and there, the more popular ones. But we haven't seen that in a long time, Sarah. So it's really great to see. It's great for our farmers. And we're starting to see orders coming in. Like I was mentioning, some of the bigger players, putting in multiple year orders because they have confidence level that we'll be able to supply large volumes across a number of years. So it's great. It's I think an inflection point for the industry. In fact, this year, I'll just quote you some statistics because I know you were curious about this. And, we are a federal marketing order. We're quasi-government. We are overseen by the USDA. So if we state a statistic, it has to be true. And we have to research it. If we're talking about, a nutritional benefit, that means that somebody's done research that has been corroborated academically more than 3 times before we can even mention it. And we can't claim it unless the USDA tells us we can. So right now we only have a hard claim. But in this past year, this April, for example, our shipments were up 22% over last year. And year to date, they're up 5% overall. 4% overall, and exports are up 5%. So we're definitely seeing consistent demand and shipments, importantly, because that's what demonstrates how much is actually getting shipped out. So we expect that that's going to continue to grow.
Thank you for that. Yes, we all understand in the reporting business of how USDA has a strong oversight over any of the checkoff organizations. So there's quite a process. We talked about sustainability and circular economy and things this morning a little bit. I know that the board has established a goal of 0 waste in the system of growing almonds, and you're doing some work on trying to make sure that you can better utilize the hulls, even perhaps as a food ingredient. So talk to us a little bit about how that's going and what you might need to see changed on the regulatory front to advance that.
Yeah, this is actually a really exciting area that we're in the midst of. Almonds are 0 waste, right? Nothing in an almond orchard goes to waste. It goes somewhere. Somebody's buying it, somebody's using it. The hulls are used as livestock feed, and they're very nutritious. And we're developing new uses for those. And you alluded to that. We have applied for GRAS status, which is generally acceptable status. Oh boy. I'm learning all the government side of this, so
okay. Recognized as safe, yeah.
Yes, it's essentially the approval for us to be able to use it as human food. That is a huge unlock because if you use the hulls for formulating a product like a nutrition bar, and we worked with Matson to do some research and trials on this, it brings up immediately your fiber levels, your protein levels, your calcium levels, many things that people that are particularly in the snack area, in broadly produced food, I'll say in snacks, are trying really hard, a lot of shareholder pressure to try to reformulate those products to make them be healthier and provide some fiber. And so this is right product, right place, right time. We expect that in the spring we should be being able to get that GRAS status certification. So we're getting a lot of calls about it already. People are excited about it because they're trying to do the right thing, and it's difficult sometimes because your input products, 1, you need consistent supply, like I said, and 2, you're always worried about pricing.
Thanks. One of the other areas of sustainability that you're working on, and one of the main challenges being water usage. There's been a lot of perhaps misperceptions about how much water is really used by your growers. So for not only our audience, but for the media who are participating both in the room and online, here's your chance to set the record straight.
This is something I've never seen happen the likes of in my entire career, Sarah, by the way, in terms of one little statistic that somehow gets morphed and just goes all the way around the world. So what we need to start with is this, that we are growing 4 crops per drop of water, period. The same water that grows the nut, grows the hulls, the shells, and the trees. And the water used to grow those 4 crops reduces the need for about 400,000 acres of alfalfa hay that do not have to be grown because those hulls are being fed to livestock. That is the equivalent of about 4 million households of water every single year. So it's 4 crops per drop. So that's not what the math was done on, that's, that circulates around the world. But the point is, though, that almond growers have increased their efficiency of water usage by 33% since 1990. And further to that, by 2025, set a goal to increase another 25%. And we're about 3/4 of the way there when we last measured it in 2022. The Almond Board continues to fund research to find more efficient water practices. And in fact, our growers have led the way. I'm sure you've reported on groundwater recharge. When Mother Nature gives us a gift of too much water, we try to put that back into the ground to recharge those aquifers, and that was almond farmers that led the way to do that. So we are a tree crop, and we use the same amount of water as other tree crops do. In fact, we use less than the other nuts. That's the fact. And that statistic about 1 gallon of water to grow an almond, with that same water footprint, if you used exactly that same math that they used, it would take 3.5 gallons of water to grow 1 head of lettuce. It would take 5 gallons of water to grow a walnut, and it would take 660 gallons of water to grow the equivalent of what you get in a hamburger. Those are the facts. So I think the point is that there's a larger story here, Sarah, in that agriculture, unfortunately, is often a target and a popular target of criticism during drought. If you live in a big city and you don't ever see farmers or how your food is grown, it's easy to forget that it takes water to produce food. And this is true for journalists as well, who are writing the stories, as well as people who are passing on the myths that they hear in either the media or social media or what have you. But actually, California Farm Water Coalition has a statistic that Californians consume about 11.2 trillion gallons of water in the food that they eat every year. 11.2 trillion gallons. And California farmers use about 8.2 billion gallons to grow all of the food that we grow in this state, which supplies 75% actually of the US's fruits and vegetables. So I think, having more education, more database information out there is super important. Almonds became a popular target because they're popular. So, if you're going to pick on somebody, pick on the biggest. You kind of get a target on your head. But when times are hard, it's human nature to want to blame someone. And, when drought hits, we just become a target. But I'd ask those same critics that, can you name another protein that is as nutritionally dense, that uses less water, especially a protein that is so nutritionally dense? And I'd also ask them that in a world that's fighting for climate change, isn't it good to have a nutritionally dense protein that grows on a tree that sequesters carbon from the air? To be specific, 30 million metric tons of carbon have been sequestered by the almond orchards in the state of California so far. So I'll stop there. I'm quite passionate about it because we have a great story to tell, and it makes me very sad to hear that, there's a little snippet that just keeps getting repeated and repeated. So thank you for giving me the opportunity, Sarah, to set that record straight.
Yeah, you're welcome, and we can certainly agree on being targeted. We had a little outburst here not too long ago. So last question for you, and then we've got a bunch from the audience. You're also investing in the export markets. You've got some new funds from the Regional Agricultural Promotion Program from USDA. The industry got $10 million. Can you give us the quick snapshot on how you plan to deploy those funds and what you hope to accomplish?
Absolutely. We are super excited about the RAP funding. Thank you, U.S. government, for coming together and making this available to people with various agricultural products throughout the U.S. It's going to enable us to move forward with some of the recommendations that Deloitte brought to us. We did a study recently, and they looked at markets around the world that would be attractive for us to explore additionally to the markets that we're already in, building demand in those new markets. So several of the activities that were approved in the application centered on those, and they're going to basically consist of consumer marketing and allowing market access. So India is our #1 export market, and we see potential for a lot more growth there. The RAP monies are focused on new regions and new markets, as I mentioned, that we haven't been able to previously explore. So a great example of that is Morocco. And they've already got an established affinity for almonds. As I mentioned, it's important that if it's part of the diet, you're not introducing it for the first time. And we don't have any duties, 0 duties. So that's really a great opportunity for us. And it's really a wonderful way to explore how that we can leverage Morocco to be a gateway to Africa. So our global trade and market development teams are working together also to explore other markets like Turkey, which has come up as an opportunity for us. So very exciting, lots going on, and lots more to understand and go do. I'm pretty sure Turkey and Morocco are in my future in the next year or two to go and check it out. I know that Julie Adams, who heads our global trade, just was on a U.S. trade mission earlier this year and came back so excited. So we couldn't be more thrilled to get the funding. We'll make sure that we put it to the highest and best use.
Thank you. We've got lots of questions coming in, but we'll have time for just taking a couple here. One is that given state and federal water policies limiting water to agriculture, do you think we've hit a peak in the United States in terms of, are we at peak almond acreage?
Have we had a peak? Well, this is the first year that we've actually seen a decline in acreage, right, in quite some time. I would expect we're probably, I don't know, it's like playing a poker game trying to forecast what that's going to look like. But I would say, yes, we're probably at a peak and having slight declines, but you've also got some orchards that are coming into production too. So on average, like I mentioned, we're pretty confident that because our yields are consistent and the trees that were planted some time ago are now in maturity, we're going to see good yields here for the next 10 years. So we'll have a decent crop. I don't think you're going to see a ton of planting in the future, no.
Thanks. And regarding the question about hulls, there was another one that wanted to know, how can we take advantage of the momentum behind using better utilization of the hulls to add a greater margin for growers?
Yeah, that's exactly one of the reasons why we were looking at it, Sarah, because we're always trying to figure out how can we bring more value to our growers, because farming in the state of California gets tougher and tougher all the time, as it always has. Right? We're going into our 175th year as a commercially produced crop in the state of California, and it's something that is always a challenge. So as soon as we get grass status, you're going to hear a lot from us about those hulls and potential different markets for them. And we're getting a lot of calls already. We definitely have a lot of interest. And we will be socializing not only what the hulls can do, but the nutritional package that they drive, so that we are talking to different CPG or R&D companies across the world, they understand the nutritional value and kind of what happens with the formulation of the product. So the Almond Board will have the role of providing the information out to the industry, and then that should create pull from our different traders and sellers around the world.
So last question for you. So we've got a little time here. We need a setup gap between our next panel. And I realize you're not an economist, but you have folks who are looking at price volatility. And so one of our questioners wants to know about, how do you see that changing between 24 and going into 25? Sounds like you're pretty bullish on the demand side.
Yes, and one of the things that I'm absolutely forbidden to talk about is price. being a federal marketing order, that's a no-no. However, I can say that again, traveling around the world, I just see, almonds were the #1 inclusion of any manufacturer produced product globally. So no matter how you measure it, right, there's still pull. People recognize the health benefits, and hopefully in the years to come, they will recognize that we are also an environmental leader in championing climate change just by the virtue of the fact that we're having irrigated forests out here that produce a nutritionally dense protein. So yeah, I don't see any waving or waning of demand at all. So demand is usually what drives the market. So I think I have to stop there, Sarah, in terms of talking about what I think is going to happen. But yes, I am bullish and super proud of our farmers out there who are still in a really difficult times.
Well, thank you, Clarice. We know that we can assure USDA that you were firmly within the guidelines of any discussion, and we wish you the best of luck with all of your meetings this week. So thank you. Please join me in thanking Clarice.
Hope to see you next year.